discuss the wall. We didn't discuss payment of the wall. That'll be for a later date. This was a very preliminary meeting. I think it was an excellent meeting.
Donald Trump, in less than a half hour, scheduled to deliver a major address on illegal immigration in Arizona. And of course, earlier today, he met in Mexico City with the president of the Republic of Mexico, where the wall was brought up. Mr. Trump says payment was not discussed. It's worth noting the Mexican President Nieto tweeted out in Espanol saying that, in fact, he at the outset said that Mexico would not pay for the wall. Of course, was that technically before the discussion? At any rate, we'd love to discuss all this with you. Our phone number is 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629 for reaction on that mini summit in Mexico and many other items worth noting. Let's turn now to Brad Blakeman, a Georgetown professor who served as an advisor to Bush 43. He joins us via Skype. And via telephone from Atlanta, Amy Kremer, who co-founded the Women Vote Trump PAC. Thanks to you both. So, Brad, your take on just the picture of Trump at the podium. Has he now checked the box presidential?
Yeah, I mean, I was so surprised that the command and control that Trump had at that podium with the head of state, and the head of state gave him due deference. He treated him as an equal, clearly. And the rhetoric of both did not match the rhetoric of the statesman-like atmosphere we saw in Mexico City. I have to say, Trump defied all expectation.
And Amy, obviously you're affiliated with a pro-Trump PAC. Will this be the turning point? Will this, in essence, be, pardon the pun, the Trump card that turns around the polls for the Republican nominee?
I think it might just be that, JD. I think he was very presidential today. I think he shocked a lot of people, but we're going into the home stretch, and I expect to see more of this from him, actually.
Perhaps a level of the desperation, Brad, comes from what we're hearing from all the Clinton surrogates and from the dominant media culture. This tweet from the Mexican president, the fact that what now? Oh, Trump has gone soft. It's almost as if they are terrified and they are just grabbing at straws. Or am I being too charitable toward the Republican nominee?
No, I think that the Democrats never thought that it would turn out like it did. They thought this was going to be more like Custer going into a massacre, and Donald Trump came out looking like Patton. Democrats have got to be beside themselves because Trump did a great job. And by the way, the Mexican president stood there, and Donald Trump said not once, but several times, the cost of the wall did not come up. If the Mexican president thought otherwise, he should have said it from the podium with Donald Trump feet away from him. He chose not to and wimped out and did it by a tweet. I have to believe that it happened the way Trump said it, not the way the Mexican president said it, because the Mexican president's approval ratings at like 30%, and he needed a home run, and Donald Trump beat him.
The picture was certainly impressive, and we know, Amy, oftentimes it is about perception, and indeed perception becomes reality, and that image of Trump at that podium in command certainly gives off the aura of the future commander-in-chief.
Absolutely, JD, and I will echo exactly what Blake said. I said that earlier tonight to a family member. You know, if that's the case, why, if that they did have that discussion, they said that he wasn't going to pay for the wall, then why didn't he call him out when he was standing there at the podium with him? So I believe it happened to go the way that that Mr. Trump said the meeting went as well. Look, I think that he was presidential tonight. I also agree that the Democrats are probably in panic mode right now. Maybe it's happened in the past. I'm not sure that it has, but I find it odd that an official government agency, the State Department, is weighing in on the political side of things. I personally don't think that's appropriate, but Donald Trump definitely surprised many of us today. I'm glad that today went the way it did, and honestly, I can see Kellyanne Conway all over this. If you understand what I mean, I think you can definitely see a change in the Trump campaign since she's joined as his, campaign manager.
Well, we are going to have to see what happens in my old Arizona stomping grounds tonight in terms of that speech at the Phoenix Convention Center. But obviously, the mini summit in Mexico certainly sets up this speech tonight in proper fashion. And the other thing about it, and you mentioned the State Department criticism, well, I think Mr. Trump was very careful. He did not say he was speaking for the United States, but he did lay out principles, and again, the Mexican president did not contradict him. So this is a huge story. We've spent most of our time on it, but we've got about 5 minutes left. I need to move to some other stories that, quite frankly, also warrant our attention. The other day, we heard about hacking into Arizona's voter registration records, and the same thing happened in Illinois earlier this summer. So there is some worry there, but now the Washington Examiner is reporting that the Department of Homeland Security may try to take command over the entire election process by claiming it as critical infrastructure. Here is what DHS Secretary J, rhymes with Meh, Johnson said earlier this month.
We should carefully consider whether our election system, our election process, is critical infrastructure, like the financial sector, like the power grid. There is a vital national interest in our election process. So I do think we need to consider whether it should be considered by my department and others critical infrastructure.
Let me tell you what worries me. Jay Johnson at the Pentagon, when he was over there, he was the guy who came up with workplace violence as the excuse for what happened in Fort Hood. If Jay Johnson tries to take over the elections, I see Cook County, Chicago ballot security, in other words, nothing, in all 50 states. Brad, am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. This is a states' rights issue. And if we let the federal government federalize our elections, that's the ultimate big brother take over state sovereignty. It cannot happen. It will not happen. But what we do need is we need a 50-state strategy on how to better control our elections to make sure they're safe and secure as technology progresses. But you would think after the debacle in 2000, we would have solved this problem. We're far from it. And it's our own problem in that we let those people in power totally not learn the lessons of 2000 in Florida. And we should have convened a conference within the 50 states to come up with a strategy to give them the power to do elections that are safe, secure, honest, and fair.
Having a little trouble with Brad's Skype, so Amy, I'm going to come to you for a second via telephone. This situation, and I can say now as a Florida voter, I've been very impressed with ballot security here, but it's obvious the Democrats don't want the kind of security we need in terms of photo ID. You've seen the militant activism go into court. The same Democrats who gladly present their ID to get on a plane apparently think it's somehow awful to have to do that for elections. So when you hear Jay Johnson saying it's critical infrastructure, Department of Homeland Security has to take over elections, what is your reaction, Amy?
I think it is a states' rights issue, and it is very concerning. I think every American should be concerned about it because, quite honestly, JD, I don't trust this administration at all. And I think that they will do anything and everything that they can to retain their power, even if that means, Obama's out and Hillary Clinton's in. That still is the Dems retaining power. And so it concerns me, and I think every American ought to be paying attention. And quite honestly, I think that as we go, if what happened today and Donald Trump continues to be presidential and we start seeing this in the polls where he's moving up and he's very close, they're, pretty much there together now, but he moves up ahead of her. I expect to see more of this. Nothing surprises me from them, but I think that all states, it is a states' right issue, and we should press our state officials on maintaining our voter integrity here in the state.
Well,
not allow the feds to intervene.
Two states had primaries, Florida and Arizona, and of course, John McCain wins again. His opponent, Kelly Ward, did a pretty good job. Even bigger win for Marco Rubio. At one point, he was going to quit the Senate. And on the Democrat side, Debbie Wasserman Schultz hangs on. Brad Blakeman, 20 seconds to you on the power of incumbency.
Power incumbency is huge. But, you know, we should be running our party like the Yankees run the Yankees. We should have a team that takes the field. We should have a farm team. And we should have upward mobility to keep our best players on the field. So incumbency is important. But I think what transcends that is party.
And I got to ask you, Amy, 15 seconds. Trump's the outsider. What should he take away from last night's primaries?
Well, I mean, the Senate's important. It's very important regardless if we win or lose the White House. And so I think there's a lot of focus on that. There's a lot of concern, obviously, because of the possible appointment of Supreme Court appointees.
And we will have to leave it right there. Amy Kremer and Brad Blakeman, we thank you for your time. Coming back with more after this.